Hey guys, it's Reading with Audrey back again with another video, and today we will be reading Chapter 9 of All the Lovely Bad Ones by Mary Downing Hahn. In the last chapter, Grandma finally got Mr. Chester and Miss Duval to pack up their things and leave. Then, Corey and Travis decided to pick up their rooms after all the paranormal activity, and you'll never believe what happened. Grandma is getting more and more convinced in believing in ghosts. Pretty cool, because you'd never think that she would believe in ghosts, but I really hope that in the next chapter she fully believes. I don't know. Let's get on with the book so we can find out. Chapter 9. After breakfast, most of the guests checked out in support of Chester and Miss Duval. At least that's what they claimed. I had a feeling some of them had their fill of ghosts and didn't want to spend another night at Fox Hill. Grandmother watched them leave. "So much for ghosts bringing business to the inn," she said. A few minutes later, the Kowalskis joined us on the porch. "What on earth was going on last night?" Miss Kowalski said. "Our TV and radio came on, as well as the lights." "We heard a lot of commotion too," Mr. Kowalski added. "People shouting and running up and down the steps. We came here for peace and quiet, not wild parties." Grandmother sighed. "I apologize for the disturbance. It won't happen again. The guests who were responsible are leaving today." "It was that strange man with the hearse, wasn't it?" Mr. Kowalski asked. "And his bizarre lady friend?" Her husband shook his head. Crazy as loons, the pair of them, going on and on about ghosts. What a load of hooey. Miss Kowalski ran a hand through her short gray hair. "Those two should get some exercise and clear their minds. Yoga would help. So would an organic diet." Rackets in hand, the Kowalskis headed for the tennis court, and Grandmother turned to Corey and me. "Time to go get some exercise yourselves," she said. "Go clean your rooms." It took us all morning to sort through the wreckage. It was clear we need new clothes, new books, too. The pages of our summer reading books were scattered everywhere. Corey's favorite teddy bear had been torn limb from limb and his stuffing strewn on the floor. I left Corey weeping over the bear and went outside to retrieve my bureau drawers. While I was gathering what I left of my underwear, I saw Mr. Brewster watching me. "Don't expect no pity from me." He spat in the grass and started to walk away. "Wait!" I hurried over and stepped in front of him. "Please tell me about the ghosts." "Get out of my way, boy." He tried to step around me, but I blocked him, as though we were playing basketball. What the heck? Sorry about that. "Mr. Brewster, I have to know what they want, so I can make them go away." For the first time I heard him laugh, a sort of growl, combined with a cough. "They've been here afore you, and they'll be here after you." "But what are they? Who are they?" The man sighed and wiped his forehead with an old handkerchief. "It would have been best if Cornelis had never seen this house, never bought it, never fixed it, never done anything." He seemed to be talking more to himself than me. "Some places ought to go to ruin. Let the bricks fall and the grass grow over 'em. Let it all be forgot and the dead stay dead." With that, he stepped around me and headed toward the inn. I stood where I was, cold despite the sun's heat, and watched him walk away. Then I gathered up the bureau drawers and their ruined contents and carried them back to my room. Just before noon, the service bell rang. Grandmother rose from her chair with a sigh, laid her book aside, and headed for the office. Corey and I followed her inside. Surrounded by their luggage and gear, Chester and Miss Duval were waiting to settle their bill. Ignoring the couple's greeting, Grandmother sat down at the computer and looked up their account. As the bill was printing, she frowned. "I would appreciate you saying nothing about last night's events," she said. "Oh, I can't agree with that, ma'am," Chester said. "I've already emailed my associates with the details and spoken to my editor at the Chronicles of Dead." "This sort of story simply cannot be swept under the rug," Miss Duval said. "The public has a right to know." "If you mention the name of this inn in a book or magazine or article or anywhere else," Grandmother said, "you will hear from my lawyer." "But that's censorship," Chester put in. "You can't." "I can and I will." Grandmother handed him the bill. "That will be $377.05, including tax." Chester slapped his credit card down on the counter, and Grandmother ran it through the machine. "Thank you," she said and handed the card back. "But think of the free publicity," Miss Duval said. "I am," Grandmother said. With a shrug, Miss Duval swept out of the inn behind Chester. We watched the ghost hunter get into his hearse and drive away, with the psychic close behind her VW. "I feel better already," Grandmother said. At lunchtime, the nearly empty dining room was so quiet I could hear bees buzzing in the flower boxes at the windows. The Kowalskis had ordered a box lunch and were hiking off in the hills, toting binoculars, bird books, cameras, and plenty of sunscreen. Tracy came to our table to refill our glasses. "I hear you had a lot of trouble last night." Her hand shook as she spoke, and she spilled a few drops of water. Grandmother watched her daub at the puddle with the corner of her apron. "Oh, leave it," she said impatiently. "Water won't stain anything." "Sorry." Tracy stepped back from the table. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just feel so nervous all the time. Everything makes me jump." Her eyes roved the room, lingering in all the corners. "We're all a little edgy," Grandmother said. "But now that those so-called psychics are gone, I'm hoping that things will return to normal. 2 guests are checking in this afternoon, and another 3 tomorrow. They asked about bike trails and hiking paths, shopping, historic sites, that sort of thing. Not one of them mentioned an interest in ghosts." Tracy didn't seem to be listening. "I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eye," she said in a low voice. "But when I look straight at them, they're gone." "That's just your imagination working overtime," Grandmother said. Twisting her apron, her face red, Tracy said, "I called my mother this morning, and I told her about all the weird stuff. She says maybe I should come home." Grandmother stared at her. "Tracy, didn't you hear what I just said? We have 5 reservations. You can't quit. I need you." "I didn't say I was quitting," Tracy whispered. "I just said my mother thinks I should come home." "And what do you think?" Grandmother asked. "You're 16 years old. I'm sure you've got your own opinions." "Yes, ma'am. Of course I do." Tracy's eyes got watery, and her lower lip quivered. I wanted to leap up and defend her, perhaps throw my arms around her and protect her, but I just sat there like a nincompoop. "Well," Grandmother said, her voice softening at the sight of a tear rolling down Tracy's cheek, "will you stay and help me?" Tracy wiped her eyes with her hands. "I'll stay," she said, as long as the ghosts don't come back." If I hadn't felt so sorry for her, I would have reminded her of what she'd said before her Nancy Drew act in the Grove. "I'm not afraid of anything." "I don't expect any more manifestations," Grandmother said. "Not with that lunatic and her crazy companion out of the picture." "Do you really think Mr. Coakley and Miss Duval faked the whole thing?" Tracy asked. "I don't know how they did it, but I'm sure that they were responsible." I glanced at Corey. She sat quietly, poking her salad this way and that in an effort to make it look as if she'd eaten some of it. She'd been so quiet all day I was beginning to worry about her. "I hope you're right, Miss Donovan." Tracy's eyes returned to the corners of the room as if she'd just glimpsed something moving in the shadows. A man who wears a ponytail and drives around in a hearse is simply not to be trusted. Grandmother ate the last of her sandwich and got to her feet. Neither is a woman who's over 20, who polishes her nails black, pierces her nose, and heaven knows what else, and claims to have psychic powers. With that, she left the dining room, her faded denim skirt swinging. Tracy sat down at her table and rested her chin on her hands. "If your grandmother didn't need me, I'd leave right now." She tried to pour herself a glass of water, but this time it slopped all over the table. "Clumsy?" someone whispered. "What did you say?" Tracy turned to me. "I didn't say anything." "Clumsy, sloppy girl." Tracy jumped up and whirled around, trying to see who'd spoken. Her apron slid to the floor, its strings untied, and the same giggling we heard last night rippled around the room. Here and there, a cloth slithered off the table, forks, spoons, and knives rose into the air, and napkins whirled like eddies of leaves on a windy day. China plates and cups smashed against walls. Ketchup bottles spurted like ruptured arteries and splattered tables and carpets. The three of us cowered together, our flesh pinched, our hair pulled, our faces slapped by invisible hands until we screamed. With a bellow of rage, Miss Brewster barreled into the room, her chest heaving. "Behave, bad ones, behave!" she screamed. "It's not us," I yelled. "We didn't do anything." But it wasn't us Miss Brewster was looking at. Her eyes were focused on the swinging chandelier. "Stop it this minute!" Behind her, a pitcher of water rose from the table, sailed through the air, and dumped itself on the old woman's head. The giggles changed into wild laughter. A cold draft swirled around us, giving us a few last pinches. Something swept out of the room. Tracy ran to Miss Brewster and began drying her with the tablecloth. "Are you all right?" Miss Brewster pushed Tracy aside and surveyed the dining room. "Why don't you go fetch Mr. Brewster?" she said. "Tell him it's worse than before." As I ran out of the room to find Mr. Brewster, I bumped into Grandmother rushing into the room. "No!" she cried. "I don't believe this!" "I want my mother!" Tracy wailed. Leaving them to settle things, I dashed out the back door and began searching for Mr. Brewster. I found him weeding the vegetable garden. "Miss Brewster sent me to get you," I shouted. "She says it's even worse than before." The old man dropped the hoe and came running. He didn't ask for an explanation. He knew. "So they done all this," he said glumly, taking in the dining room. Overturned chairs, linens on the floor, puddles of water, broken china, ketchup on the walls. Tracy weeping, his wife rubbing her wet hair with the tablecloth. Turning to Corey, Mr. Brewster said, "You and your pranks. I hope you're satisfied, miss." Without looking at him, my sister ran out of the dining room. When I followed her, she tried to slam her door in my face, but I managed to push away into her room. "What's wrong with you?" I yelled. "Why won't you talk to me? Are you mad at me?" "I'm scared," she whispered. Just scared, that's all." She sank down on her bed and began to cry. "I want to go home." I sat beside her and patted her shoulder. "Don't you think I'm scared too?" "Let's call Mom." "No." My chest was so tight with fear, I thought I was having a heart attack. "We started this, we have to finish it." Corey raised her hand and looked at me with teary eyes. But how do we do that?" "They're ghosts," I said. "They must be here for a reason. Unfinished business or something." "The Brewsters know more than they're saying," Corey muttered. As she spoke, I glanced out the window and saw Miss Brewster walking slowly across the grass toward the barn. Her hair and dress were still wet from the pitcher of water. She looked tired. While I watched, she vanished behind the edge. "I wonder where she's going," I said. Corey perked up. "Let's follow her." We ran across the lawn and peeked through the hedge. Miss Brewster was standing in the weeds, staring down at the numbered stones. "It's too bad. That's what it is," she said softly. "You ought to be sleeping peaceful. All of you." As she spoke, shadows stirred among the stones and whispered in the grass. "That boy and the girl are bad ones," she muttered. "Full of pranks and mischief, just like you." She cocked her head like a robin, listening for a worm to turn in the earth. "No, it ain't punishment they need," she said. "No more than you needed it." She cocked her head again, listening hard to the rustle in the weeds, and then looked up, straight at our hiding place. "Come out from there. Didn't nobody teach you manners?" Corey and I stepped through a gap in the hedge. A cloud drifted across the sun and turned the day cold. "Who were you talking to?" I whispered. "Nobody." Miss Brewster frowned at Corey and me, her face grim. "You were talking to them." Corey's voice shook. "They're here. I can feel them all around us, watching, listening." Hoping to calm her, I took my sister's hand, but she snatched it away. "Tell us who they are," she cried. "Tell us what they want. Tell them we're sorry. Tell them—" "Sorry. Can't change nothing." Miss Brewster interrupted. "It's got to run its course now." "But can't you just tell us who they are?" I asked. I can't, Miss Brewster said. Maybe they will. With that, she pushed past us and strode off toward the inn. Even her shadow looked angry. For a moment, I thought Corey was going to run after her and keep begging for answers. But she stayed where she was, head down, staring at the numbered stones. Come on. I reached for her hand again. Let's go back to the inn. The cloud had moved past the sun, and the day was hot again, thick with humidity and buzzing, biting bugs. Corey watched a butterfly drift from one stone to the next, pausing to fan its wings. I never really believed in ghosts before, she said. Me either. As I spoke, a pebble hit my cheek, then another, and another. Suddenly, the air was full of pebbles, striking Corey and me, but too small to do more than a sting. At the same moment, the giggling started, and the whispers. Corey and I ran toward the hedge, pebbles flying after us, but before we reached it, a shadow detached itself from the deep shade and blocked our path. Corey covered her face with her hands, but I stared into the darkness so hard my eyes stung. Someone was there, but I couldn't see more than a vague shape. Who are you? I whispered. Who are you? It whispered back, coming a little closer. What do you want? What do you want? Stop copying me! Stop copying me. It yelled in a shaky voice just like mine. Stop copying me! Stop! Stop! Stop copying me! Stop! Stop! Laughter erupted all around us. A hand pulled my hair so hard I saw strands floating away. Corey cried out in pain and stumbled backwards, holding her cheek, the skin red from a slap. You'd better be scared, someone whispered. Where are the bad ones? The lovely bad ones. The bad, bad, bad ones. Corey and I ran, but we couldn't escape the laughter or the pinches, slaps, and yanks at her hair. It was like being chased by a swarm of stinging hornets. Only worse. When hornets sting you, you know what they are. You can see them. Somewhere near the grove, our pursuers gave up and let us escape, but we kept running until we reached the inn and stumbled through the kitchen door. Miss Brewster looked up from the chicken she was preparing and scowled. Before she could say a word, we rushed past her and headed for the library. Neither of us wanted another scolding. Alright guys, that is the end of chapter 9 of All the Lovely Bad Ones by Mary Downing Hahn. I hope you enjoyed it. It was super duper interesting. Now we know that they're the lovely bad ones, as they told us. But I wonder, how many of them are there? And what do Mr. and Miss Brewster know? Guess I'll have to wait and see and find out in the next chapter of All the Lovely Bad Ones by Mary Downing Hahn. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and turn on post notifications. And have a good day. Bye, guys!